call this meeting to order, April 27, 2015, CRA meeting at 5:05 p.m. Please note for the record, Mr. City Clerk, that Commissioners Suarez, Sarnoff, Gort, and myself, Chairman Keon Hardeman, are here in presence. I'd like to move on to the first item of business, which is approving the minutes of the following meeting dated March 30th, 2015.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the regular agenda meeting minutes of March 30th, 2015. Is there any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Moving on now to resolution number 1, amendment to the declarations of restrictions regarding Block 45 with Miami-Dade County.
Commissioners, item number 1 is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Southeast Overtown Park West Community Redevelopment Agency with attachments authorizing the Executive Director of the Southeast Overtown Park West Community Redevelopment Agency to execute an amendment to the Declaration of Restrictions regarding Block 45 with Miami-Dade County, Florida, to extend the time frame for commencement of vertical construction of the retail component and the residential component by 6 months from May 15, 2016 to November 15, 2016, and granting a 6-month extension of the date of the reverter to the county if vertical construction does not commence by the vertical construction deadline from May 15, 2016 to November 15, 2016.
I'm going to open up the floor for public hearings. Does anyone from the public like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'm going to close public hearing at this time. Commissioners, any discussion?
Move it for discussion. Second for discussion.
It's been properly moved by Commissioner Gort, seconded by Commissioner Suarez that we pass this. Any unreadiness?
Just real quick
You're recognized,
discussion.
sir.
I just want to put on the record, because I think, big part of the frustration that we've had as board members, and, it's no secret, is things taking longer than what they should and carrying over balance, et cetera, et cetera. So can you just put on the record why a 6-month extension is being requested?
Well, actually, with this particular item, the 6-month extension is being requested by the developer because of the time frame for which the county provided for the vertical construction of this project. It's a fairly complex project. It's a mixed-use project. It has a hotel component. It has residential component. Even within the residential component, there is affordable housing to be built as well as retail on the ground floor. The developer has always asked that they have a 36-month construction build-out period. But during our negotiations with the county, and you remember this was quite contentious, they always held to a real tight time frame. I think it was in order to force, a settlement to the litigation.
Sure.
So we've settled the litigation. The developers are moving ahead, and the county's now more receptive to giving the proper amount of time for this development to be built. Just to let you know, they actually approved an item as well over on the county side to grant an extension of 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
That was going to be my question.
Can we
Commissioner
thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you going to anticipate another 6-month extension 6 months from now?
Well, no. What's going to happen is if they want an additional 6 months, they'll have to pay for it. That's a part of the declaration of restrictions as well. They can get an additional 6 months, but they'll have to pay for it.
Unless we waive it.
Unless you waive it, yes, as a board.
So, Mr. Woods, so to be clear, here, we're giving them an opportunity to extend for 6 months because the delay was not to their detriment, to their fault, rather.
Right. This doesn't contemplate a delay at all. This basically accounts for what they projected their actual build out to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Moving on to RE2.
Commissioners, resolution number 2 is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Southeast Overtown Park West Community Redevelopment Agency accepting the recommendation to select Harold A. Johnson Consulting Group, Inc. as the top-ranked proposer to perform contract compliance and monitoring services for the Miami World Center Mixed-Use Development Project, further authorizing the executive director to negotiate with the top-ranked proposer to perform that service.
Move it for discussion.
Second for discussion.
It's been properly moved and seconded to accept this agenda item. I'm going to open up the floor right now for public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that'd like to speak on this item? Seeing no persons interested in the item, I'll close the floor for public hearing. Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll defer to Commissioner Gore because I went first on the last item, so I'll give him the floor.
Well, really, the question that I asked, and go into the backup material, you had the three individuals that performed the evaluations.
Yes.
Okay. You have, when it comes to construction service certification,
Mm-hmm.
you have two of you put 0, and one put 30. Does they have a certification or not? When you look at the,
I'm sorry?
Harold A. Johnson Consulting Group does have the certification.
okay, so if you add that 30, you talk about the,
Are you looking at Ann Pope?
I'm Pope Consulting.
Okay, Ann Pope
Two
does
of them you
not.
put 0 and one put 30.
Two did not have the certification, one did. Harold Johnson Consulting Group had the certification, that was the only one that did.
So did he have it in that day, but he got it later? Or how does that work?
And I think I can clarify this a little bit better. If you look at the first score sheet, if you look at Ann Pope and Gospel Truth, both of them had scores of 0.
Right.
Harold Consulting had a score of 30. When you move on to the next document, you'll see that Gospel Truth and Pope, 10, 30, and then Harold, 30. And then you move to the last document, you see Gospel Truth has 0, and Pope, 0, and Harold Consulting, 30. So the discrepancy between the other forms and the zeros and these 30s.
Well, it appears as if the second rater rated Gospel Truth as being, or as having it, and I'm not sure if that was an oversight on her part or her behalf, but we do have two raters that both are given zeros.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
I'll add something else. There are SB certifications that were presented with the two proposers.
Right.
One of them was with Miami-Dade County, which I think was what we were looking for, and Ms. Pope did not have that Miami-Dade County SB certification. So I don't know, I can't speak to that, ranking of 30. Maybe she saw the SB
'Cause-
certification from a different
Well,
organization.
that
and
much
gave
question,
her-
because that's a very special document.
Yeah.
And if
Yes.
someone said they have it, and then the other don't have it, it's,
I can't speak to, I guess, how she rated this particular document. I can show you the certifications that they do have. I do have the proposals here.
Commissioner Suarez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it seems to me that what Commissioner Gore is saying is that they either do have it or they don't have it. It's an either
Right.
or. So what you're saying is there's an error in the scoring, essentially.
Well, again, I think Renee just kind of explained it. There was a certification, and maybe the second rater didn't score what we were actually looking for.
Got it.
She had the school board certification,
Okay.
not the Miami-Dade County certification. So she must have given credit just based on having a certification
I got it.
for SB services, but not the Miami-Dade
Which actually
County.
makes sense, because there's 0 to 30. I mean, you don't have to.
Right.
Okay. I guess Mr. Chair, are you, Commissioner, are you okay, or do you want further discussion? Because my issue is totally different. So,
go ahead.
I'll wait for you. Different.
No, I'm finished.
Recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, actually, my issue is a little bit more general in nature, kind of more 50,000-foot perspective, and that's that I'm really glad that it seems to me that this is one of the first, if not the first times, that we're actually approving someone to oversee,
Yes.
a project of this magnitude and a TIF agreement of this magnitude. I've been saying it for years. I think Commissioner Board has also been saying it for years, and I'm sure Commissioner Sarnoff agrees that we really should spend some time and energy and money making sure that these agreements that we're putting into, which are multi-million-dollar agreements, that there's someone making sure that they're being complied with, because it's only half as good to negotiate tough as you have, you know what I mean, and get the right thing to happen. If we don't have the backside monitoring, we never know at the end of the day, unless someone complains and says, hey, this is not happening. So I just think it's great that we're doing this now.
And Commissioners, I will say that this was part of the agreement that was included with the World Center, that we have an independent outside entity monitoring it. And we select that body, and that organization pays for it.
I can tell you, it's the first time we've done it, so kudos to you.
Thank you for all of your help
No,
with
yeah.
this, so I appreciate it. But is there any further on readiness? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against? Motion passes. Moving on now to RE3.
Commissioners, resolution number 3 is a resolution with attachments of the Board of Commissioners of the Southeast Overtown Park West Community Redevelopment Agency, ratifying the Executive Director approval of the sign permit application in the attached form and approving the acceptance by the CRA of the restrictive covenant in the attached form with Northwest First Avenue and 10th Street, LLC, a Florida Limited Liability Company, First Avenue, 59 Northwest 10th Street, LLC, a Florida Limited Liability Company, and 41 Northwest 10th Street, LLC, a Florida Limited Liability Company, together with First Ave and 59th Northwest, collectively the owner, and Miami Big Block, LLC, a Florida Limited Liability Company, together with First Ave, 59 Northwest, and 41st Northwest, collectively the developer.
Commissioners, if I may, before you open up the matter for the public hearing, I just want to clarify, although this resolution asks for this board to ratify the executive director's decision, I just want to clarify that section 6.5 of Miami 21, which is the applicable regulation when it comes to media towers, states that it's only the executive director of the CRA that needs to give the approval. Ratification of the CRA board is actually not a requirement. If Mr. Woods thinks it's appropriate to bring it before the board, that certainly is a prerogative, but it is not something that this board necessarily needs to rule upon or make a decision today. I also further want to clarify, both for the board as well as the public or anyone who else may want to be interested, to the extent that this matter is ratified today and or Mr. Woods gives his approval, the developer still needs to go through the permitting process with the City of Miami, which requires any other applicable regulations and statutory requirements to be complied with, whether that's federal regulations, county regulations, or city regulations.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to do is give Mr. Riccio, give you an opportunity to if you have a presentation, make your presentation, and then we can follow from that point forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the board. For the record, my name is Tony Riccio with Law Office at 2525 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, Suite 700. I'm joined today by several people, with specifically Mr. Michael Simpkins, who is the managing partner of the permittee, the design architect, Bill Sharpless. We've got a couple of consultants that may be able to respond if there are any questions, and I also have co-counsel, specifically Ms. Iris Escara and Mr. Edward Martos. We're here on behalf of the permittee, Miami Big Block LLC, and related entities. It appears, based on what Mr. Min has just said, that the actual item, perhaps that's before you, is less about ratification and more about the actual covenant commitments, and I will get into those in a moment. But first, I'd like to ask Iris to come up, Ms. Escara, to talk a little bit about the physical context so that you understand a little more about this. We want to present this project to you so that you all have a clear picture of what it is.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the CRA Commission. My name is Iris Escara with offices at 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue. The item before you today is actually the first phase of a special area plan that we've been working on. Shortly thereafter, this year, you'll be seeing the special area plan. The developer in this area has made a huge investment into the Southeast Overtown Park West, specifically in the Park West area. He is looking to create what's called an innovation district. This is not your typical district of residential. This is a district that is going to be at least 50% office. It's going to attract the Googles. We've really put in a lot of work and effort into creating this really unique space in Southeast Overtown Park West, but that's yet to come. Regarding the item before you, I'd like to put a little context to the history of media towers in the Southeast Overtown Park West. In February 2002, the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals, the Planning Zoning Board at the time adopted Resolution 10-02 regarding a rewrite to Zoning Ordinance 11,000 to allow media towers. In 2002, the CRA Master Plan also created and permitted media towers in the Southeast Overtown Park West. Secondly, in 2004 and 2009, Dover Cole did a master plan for the Southeast Overtown Park West that was adopted not only by the CRA, but also by the Planning, Zoning, and in 11,000, the boards were different names. Planning Advisory Board, and the City Commission adopted this plan, which included a media tower. Specifically, the media tower in the plan showed the location of the media tower, meaning it called out our site here, which is at the intersection of 10th Street and 1st Avenue, as a proposed media tower location. And that is the exact location that is before you this afternoon with regards to a location of a media tower. So this is something that's been in the books since 2002, has gone through various public hearings with regards to adoption of Miami 21, and Miami 21 section 654 originally and currently 651 allows for a media tower, has criteria with regards to the media tower, incorporates the CRA executive director to also review the media tower. So we just wanted to make sure that in the record that this is something that's longstanding and it's been in the books for over 13 years with regards to allowing media towers in the Southeast Overtown Park West. With that said, I'm going to pass it back to Tony and then I'll be back.
So section 6.51, which used to be 6.54, same section, it says what a media tower is supposed to be. It talks about a media tower as a structure that may serve as a viewing tower, I'm reading from the code here, and a kinetic illuminated media display system, utilizing signage, video, and all other forms of animated, illuminated visual message media. And it is specifically within the Southeast Overtown Park West redevelopment area. So if we go through that, you've got several elements to that. It may utilize a combination of signage, video, lighting, all other forms of animated, illuminated visual messaging. It must be located in the Southeast Overtown Park West, and then there's some additional criteria. It has to establish a unique local, regional, and national identity within the area. And I'm going to invite Bill Sharpless, the project designer, in a moment to walk you through how this achieves that. It also has to strengthen the economy of the city. And again, that has to do with design, that also has to do with community benefits. It has to provide a source of funds to be used exclusively within the redevelopment area. So that's another angle of this, and we're gonna walk you through how we meet all of those. That was already reviewed by Mr. Woods in issuing his approval. As the executive director, the code provides him with the exclusive authority to issue this approval. He has issued this approval. He has found that these criteria have been met. And he relied upon not only the approval and not only the community benefits, which we will spell out, but also the building itself was reviewed by the zoning department for compliance with Miami 21. It was confirmed that it met the criteria under Miami 21 for approval as a by right project. That's the building itself. It was reviewed and approved by the Federal Aviation Administration, so the FAA has approved this, and it fits within the context of the greater downtown area. Now, this is not the first time that the concept of a media tower has been raised here in the city. There have been previous attempts to seek approval or previous proposals. The first proposal that you see was an early proposal back in 2004. The second was a 2009 proposal, which wasn't even in this district, which could not, or in this redevelopment area. They could not use this. They actually petitioned the city to adopt a second ordinance to allow it in the Omni district. Those regulations are currently in place, but that has since been abandoned. Those proposals tried to reach this concept, but they were not unique enough. They didn't incorporate the transparent digital media in the DNA of the structure. They really didn't have that. They weren't built for that. They were buildings where things were slapped onto the side of it, onto their facades. That is very different from what we are proposing, and I want to clarify that, and I want to make sure that Bill walks you through, because I think you'll see what this proposal is a genuine kinetic sculpture. It is an artistic, an architectural masterwork, and Mr. Sharpless is an incredible designer, world-renowned, and I'm going to ask him at this point to walk you through this element, this capstone element of the Innovation District.
So we actually brought a PowerPoint.
Can you please announce your name and your address for the record?
Bill Sharpless, one of the partners at Shop Architects, based in Lower Manhattan at 233 Broadway. We actually brought a PowerPoint with us today, and we kind of not only want to talk about the design of this structure, which I'm going to use a term, I know the term media tower has been used, but the term we've been using in the design of this building has been an innovation tower. And it's the beginning of something that's going to evolve over time. A lot of the ideas, the DNA of this tower, from the standpoint of its materials, sustainability, its elements, will play a huge factor in terms of how the rest of this story unfolds. And I think it's important in terms of how we explain this in that context. Because right now, there's nothing on that site. There's nothing around it. But when you start looking at the bigger picture and the years down the road, a lot is going to be happening within the district, but also the surrounding developments. Next slide. So, what is an icon? What is a world-class icon, and what does it represent in terms of the city, in this case, Miami? And you go to all the major cities, whether international or North American, and there are iconic elements that people remember. When they come, they think about that city, they think of these icons. And it's interesting, there's a scale with this relationship. Now, in terms of a tower, 1,000-foot, 1,400, 2,000 feet, they all look the same. But we get into this range of what we call around like the 600, 500-foot range. They all become very, very specific in terms of their look. And this is something that we find really intriguing in terms of the height of this particular tower. We also looked at in terms of what inspires us. And in some ideas, in terms of form, we look at artists. Whether it's Noguchi, Richard Serra, Nugambo, Barragan, there's something about form, strong form, that really becomes a clear signifier. Next slide. And in terms of what that could begin to represent itself on this site. Next slide. Also in terms of, icon, in terms of its relevance to, we just lost the image, is in terms of, in this case, nautical, but in the idea of the sail. That this idea of sail begins to articulate, the form and the geometry of this structure, and the mesh itself. In terms of how that begins to express itself within the landscape of the city of Miami. Now, no, this is the first phase, and we see nothing around it. But we all know things are going to be developing around this. So this becomes, again, an element, an anchor, a DNA that starts informing us about what could be coming. And we'll take you there. In terms of texture and materiality, these are all shop projects except Issey Miyake on the left here, a fashion designer. But, the idea of old materials such as terracotta or translucent materials such as glass, the idea of screen and light, and most importantly, the idea of natural materials, living materials, green walls, improving, the idea of quality of air in terms of image, in terms of lighting, in terms of tectonic. Next slide. And what could that look like? I mean, during the day, in terms of, are we talking about stone? Possibly. Are we talking about glass? Possibly. Mesh. Translucency, the idea that the tower, depending on what time of day or night, begins to take on ephemeralness, the idea that it breaks down scale, in some cases potentially even disappears. Next slide. And also starting to understand its orientation. Its orientation at the base for the pedestrian, how the pedestrian enters it. Its orientation in terms of, you know, how it projects itself away from residences. And then also the idea of when you're up at the top, your views out, your views towards the city. And how that begins to structure itself. Again, you know, we're talking about 3 sails that orient themselves in a very specific way, and begins to explain kind of the architecture and structure and rationalization of this form. And then how do we kind of deploy that material? Now, in terms of the active kinetic condition, say in the middle where it ranges between this 400 and 200 foot elevation, but then how it begins to bleed off. And in some cases, you know, in terms of how it's lit, how it's translucent, how it's solid, but it's not all one thing. It's many different things. Next slide. And again, how does that begin to read itself in the landscape? What potential things would be in this? Well, we're looking at observation, kind of an elevated winter garden, a restaurant, restaurants, retail, studios down at the base, and we'll talk about that a little later. The idea that we have an active roof, a green roof, an amphitheater, something, again, the community can engage, and most importantly at the base, that there's a relationship with the pedestrian. Next slide. And so we're on 10th and really kind of the 10th, corner of 10th and 1st Avenue. And this is an entry point into the base of the tower. This is one of the entry points from the south. And you can see kind of this idea of what we kind of call this kind of draped stone or some kind of, you know, something that has substance. It's very real at the base. Next slide. And what is that, you know, what's that experience? This is our Barclays Arena in Brooklyn, New York, home of the Brooklyn Nets. Actually, the record changed once this building was built, by the way. But this is what the pedestrian deserves at ground. People hang out at this place day and night because of this moment. And sometimes that moment is represented in terms of what's happening inside. Sometimes it is advertising, and sometimes it's artists. Artists actually exhibit within this. So this is something where Bruce Ratner, the builder of this project, is important, giving back to the community. Next slide. And what could that be in terms of this particular project, in terms of, you know, performance, in terms of, you know, art, in terms of animation, kinetics, energy. So this is looking north. You can just see the tower, and inside is combination retail and studios. These are elements we believe are very reflective of the potential program that this tower will become to be recognized for. And then higher up, kind of 3/4 up, we have this idea of this 3-tier winter garden, and this idea incorporating green roof, views out towards the city. Again, potentially looking at a very transparent moment where the tower kind of begins to, its structure becomes more apparent, and the activity inside becomes more transparent. Next slide. And so this is an image in terms of just lighting effect. And again, we're talking about a kinetic screen that has the ability to create this kind of luminance, this kinetic. Yes, there will be images and so forth, but there's also moments where it becomes just this icon of light and color. Next slide. But how does this play out? And this is where, for us, it's not, we didn't design this in a vacuum. We designed this in terms of its relationship not only to the Innovation District, which some of you have just started to see, just in Park West, just north of the tower, but also all the activity to the south. You know, Ola Board, Florida, you know, Miami World Center. The amount of activity, energy in this area of the city, it's a city within a city. And this becomes an icon, cornerstone, we believe, to that moment, future moment in time. And what could that be? This is at the intersection of North Miami and 11th Street. This is looking west. You can see the Innovation Tower in the distance. Above you is a piece of art hanging down what we call the cloud. This is going to be a space, we're looking towards, an innovation district where 50% of the real estate will be dedicated to commercial activity. That's the idea of bringing young startups, education, and more importantly, attracting world-class IT companies to the area. And this is a view where we're standing, aligning ourselves, looking east on 11th, and this is First Avenue. And we're beginning to feel, how does that begin to engage the pedestrian? Not only in terms of a landscape, but also in terms of how people move into this site. And so this is a piazza or center space that right behind me is the Innovation Tower. And what surrounds us about 15 feet in the air are studios, potentially for music, TV. Above that, potentially a company, innovation company, whether it's a Microsoft, Google, or a young startup within the city. And then looking up in the distance up there, we see that aperture. That's what we call the cloud, and that's a public space up there. And we'll get into what does that mean. Right now, there's been a lot of development in terms of how the public enters into the innovation district, but we also want to understand how the public engages the section of this innovation district. And so 10 stories up in the building, we have retail, public space, and some commercial shared space. And this is what these innovation companies are looking for. A lot of especially the ones out on the West Coast, are moving towards cities because the millennials don't drive. They like to work, live, and play in one area. And that's where we want to look at in terms of what this place could be. Again, a city within a city. And so when you look at this from this bird's eye view, what you notice is the amount of green on the upper level. We're talking about ranging from 3 stories up to 12 stories. This is an inhabitable green roof. Next slide. It's not something new to us. Actually, we've been doing a number of green roofs. The green roof on the right is Pier 15. The green roof in the middle is the largest green roof in South Africa. It's for the Botswana Innovation Hub, and the green roof for the Barclays Arena. These are all elements that create an attraction, and more importantly, allows the public access to a space they generally never are able to get to. And that's what we expect in terms of this district as it relates to, the Innovation Tower. The tower is literally right behind me. Next slide. And what could those experiences be, especially at night, in terms of entertainment, performance? We see the Innovation Tower playing a role in that. And in terms of how that informs the rest of the community, again, people are going to be living, working here. The tower will be engaging that. It's something that we'll we will begin to measure in terms of how it's presented, how it performs. Next slide. And ultimately, becomes something where people, when they think of Miami, will never forget.
Thank you so much. If I could just, for a few minutes, just talk about the context of our tower. Our tower is proposed here at 633 feet. It stands behind Biscayne Boulevard. Biscayne Boulevard is pretty much fully developed with buildings that are 679, 700, 649, 615. So from the water, looking into downtown, you have this nice row of beautiful buildings that were built within the last 10 years. You have Miami World Center just behind them. They'll be developed in the next few years, which is going to fill that area. Then what you have here is you have a tribute on the western edge of the downtown core with the sign that actually draws attention to that particular spot. The height is in context with its surroundings, where you have areas in Brickell that are up to 789 feet, 1,000 feet for Brickell City Center. You have the sky rise at 1,000 feet. So our particular project at 633 feet is actually in context with its surroundings.
So even though it's not the biggest or the tallest, it's certainly unique and distinctive, and that was part of the vision when the City Commission adopted this ordinance way back when, and has carried through this vision for Southeast Overtown Park West of establishing a unique national identity within the area. Now, That was all by way of background. What we're really here to discuss are the community benefits, because that's what I believe is your city attorney advised is really what this board is here to look at. There are three kinds of benefits, three groups of benefits. One is the financial and in-kind benefits. Another one has to do with employment. And then a final one has to do with outreach and workforce training. So first, to walk you through the financial and in-kind benefits. There are $5 million in initial lump sum contributions, broken up $3 million at building permit, $2 million at certificate of completion. Before any images, before the tower is ever lit up, the Innovation Tower will have paid $5 million into the Overtown Park West CRA. And that is regarding a source of funds. Now, to make sure that funding continues, there is a continuing commitment of 3% of gross revenues for the Innovation Tower, with a minimum of $1 million annually. This is an annual contribution. It will continue as long as the Innovation Tower is operating. The permittee is donating also time and other in-kind benefits. So the Overtown Park West CRA is going to have approximately 30 minutes of time daily that they can space out however they want and program however they want for public service messaging. There's an additional 15 minutes of time per day, which is going to go to other nonprofits and other charitable organizations. There will be 200 free tickets per month issued to the CRA for distribution to school-aged children, so that kids can go and see the uses within the Innovation Tower, including the observation decks, including the digital studios, so they can see where people are working and creating. And then there's a plaza associated with this, and I think Bill touched on that. That plaza was also part of the original 2004 redevelopment plan that was adopted. It was included in the 2009 plan. That plaza is directly north of this property. This carries through and continues with that plaza. That plaza will face the opening, and that opening of the Innovation Tower actually opens to the north and west, which is a wonderful thing because it's bridging the two communities of Park West and Southeast Overtown, and that's really what this is about. So that plaza will be open to the CRA for programming on a minimum once a month for any activities that the CRA would like to host. Now, in terms of employment goals, there's been some significant employment commitments. 20% of the construction subcontractors must come from the CRA redevelopment area. There are significant penalties for not reaching those. A minimum of $10,000, actually creeping up to $20,000 per percentage point that this is not met. Secondly, in terms of construction laborers, not the subcontractors, but the laborers, there's a 40% requirement that those workers come from the CRA redevelopment area. Again, there are significant penalties for not meeting those goals. So these are meant to be enforceable. Once the tower is built, there will be a number of permanent jobs, almost 700 permanent jobs, okay? Of those 700 jobs, 40% of those have to be filled with Miami residents with preference criteria. Initial preference is going to residents within the CRA. And then those workers, all of the workers, 100% of the workers that work on permanent jobs, they will be paid a living wage plus $1. That's the minimum that anyone can be paid on this development. This is about building people up, and that's what we're trying to do with this provision. Now, there's also a number of outreach and training programs regarding job assistance programs. There's a $200,000 initial contribution to a job assistance program. There will be 2 job fairs during construction. This is a massive construction project, between $200 and $300 million to get this Innovation Tower up and running. So there will be 2 job fairs at the beginning of construction to let the community know, okay, look, these are the jobs that are available. This is how you can qualify. Then, before construction ends, there will be 2 additional job fairs, okay, for Southeast Overtown residents for permanent jobs, for some of those close to 700 permanent jobs. And then, on a continuing basis, since this is supposed to continue operating, there's 2 annual job fairs. Again, this is all about identifying qualified applicants and letting potential applicants know what they need to do to focus on so that they can get a job here. We're also teaming with a local job placement organization to implement that local preference hiring. So, in summary, this tower is going to serve as a landmark in 2 ways. It's in design, which I think you've seen, and also in terms of a community partnership. This is a very strong program of community benefits. We've worked hard to get it to this point, and this was the kind of program that will continue delivering benefits. It will also catalyze development in the area, will spur redevelopment in the area, which is really what the goal of this ordinance was. That's what the commission envisioned when they originally adopted it, and it's what they envisioned when they kept it, despite opportunities to change it. This is going to serve as the capstone. It's a monument. It's a landmark. Similar to the Miami Tower when it was built in the 1980s, it's going to be the signature building when you show the skyline. Okay? It's going to fit within the context of the skyline. It's not going to be the tallest or the biggest again, but it's going to be a signature edifice. So we look forward to fulfilling the promise that the commission originally intended when they adopted these provisions, and what this CRA board has been fulfilling. We look forward to helping you, assisting you in fulfilling that promise, and to delivering all of these community benefits that I've spelled out. With that, Mr. Simpkins would like to say a couple of words, and then we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
My name is, let the record state, my name is Michael Simpkins. I'm the managing partner of these entities that are proposing this today. You know, my team has done a great job presenting the tower. I'm here to tell you a little bit about me and a little bit about our thinking to get to this point. I was born and raised in Miami, and my partners and family were born and raised here too. We spend a tremendous amount of time thinking about the city that's our home, trying to help it, nourish it, and wanting to see it improve. We purchased a large amount of property. We have over 9 acres in Park West. And when we were evaluating what we should do with the property, we took a look at the other major special area plans happening around Miami. And they were all the same. They have a huge retail component and they have a huge residential component. And that's great. It's really good for Miami, those projects. We could have taken the path of least resistance and put apartments and condominiums and made a good profit on this and not been subjected to a lot of criticism. Or we could have taken the harder road. We could partner with a CRA, implement their redevelopment plan from 2009, follow the letter of the law in Miami 21, and search the entire world for the best architect that we could find to implement that plan. And that's what we did. And that's why I'm here tonight. And I want to see this become a reality for my city, because we deserve high-paying jobs. We deserve the innovation districts to bring 13,000 people. If Google or Facebook wanted to come to Miami, there's nowhere for them to go. They can't fit in Wynwood. They're not going to be with the bankers in Brickell. We want to give them a home. And that's what this is all about. And I also want to say, the biggest beneficiary of this is Miami. And in addition, it's the residents of Overtown. The benefits from this tower flow to small businesses, minority-owned, in Overtown. $5 million initially. If you have a car service, if you want to start a cafe, these monies will be available to you to start a business. And this is a catalyst project. This innovation tower is so important to seeing this entire vision become a reality. And that's why we're here tonight. Thank you.
The Thank you very much for your presentation. Members of the board, I must say, well, first, I appreciate you taking the time to present the information to all of us that are here. I know that we have a number of people from the community and also from the media that are here witnessing what it is that we're seeing for the first time before all of you. And so there's one thing, though, and looking at what I've seen today that I found to be missing. And I appreciate Mr. Min for explaining to all of us that we don't need a ratification process, so we know that we're not here for that matter. But you can tell that you've been watching what the CRA has been doing in terms of community benefits agreements. And I beg to say that you've noticed, but I don't think you've done enough. And by that, we just passed a resolution that talked about monitoring the performance of the Miami World Center different agreement. Now, this is different from the World Center agreement because you're not seeking any TIF dollars from us, but we appreciate that you come to us and you say you have these goals that you want to meet within our redevelopment area. But as I read through the agreement, I see the same language in this agreement that I saw when I first came aboard as chairman of this organization. And that, the way that I saw it, was always a best efforts or reasonable efforts type language. So these were goals, they had not much teeth, and even though they had penalties there, they would have been very difficult to achieve payment for those penalties because of the way the language was put within the agreements. So now, when I have the agreement before me, and I'm sure all the commissioners have noticed that there is information in there that talks about reasonable efforts. And it's reasonable efforts on page 9 as it pertains to during construction, on page 10 with labor participation. You move on, and you also see reasonable efforts as far as employment by tenants of the developer and developers affiliates, and also the salaries. So great. The people from the area are getting enhanced living wages. You've actually used a phrase that we have coined here in the Southeast Overtown Park West CRA. However, my concern is that we don't have a way that we can guarantee that those wages will be paid in any process in which we need to do that. And so, because since we're not here to approve any of that documentation, I don't see why it is that we should even be considering this if the agreement is not in a way that's even acceptable to the people that live within this area. Additionally, there was a statement that was made that this is best for the Overtown residents and the small businesses and such. Yes, in the sense of maybe we get some monies that we can give to those people that are there, but besides the community space where people can just come there, how is it that people who are small businesses within the redevelopment area can make themselves a better living if they are involved or interacting with their site? That's not properly spelled out within the community benefits agreement. And so when I think about that, I think that you did a job well done, a great effort, a reasonable effort, and if you were in court, I'm sure that you would pass the muster, but you wouldn't pay any penalties. And so what we want to make sure is that the people who are in Overtown have an opportunity to not only have good salaries, but have opportunities to have employment as far as their own, employing their own employees, establishing their own businesses, being able to participate and interact with those who are the Googles, who are the Microsofts. Because if you're going to create this city, like you say, within a city, then the people who have been in this city want to be in that city also. You can't lock those magic doors. Do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so the way that I see it is that this still needs significant work before a community benefits agreement is even acceptable to the Overtown community and the Southeast Overtown Park West CRA. And so what I'm asking of my board members is that we defer this to another time to allow them to go back to the drawing board, if you will, not the architectural drawing board at least, but to reconsider how it is that you plan on having our community interact with this innovation tower that you've constructed.
Move for deferral. Second for discussion.
It's been properly moved for deferral by Commissioner Carollo, seconded by Commissioner Suarez. Is there any further discussion regarding that deferral?
I have something.
To what date?
May 25th will be the next regularly scheduled CRA meeting.
And a setting of time.
Mr. Woods?
Well, May 25th is actually Memorial Day. We can have it the following day, that Tuesday. if it's okay with the board, the day after Memorial Day.
And is that enough time to meet with Mr. Riccio to?
Yes.
Mr. Riccio, is that enough time for you?
We'll make it work.
You sure?
We'll make it work.
I'm not sure what exact date that is, but the Tuesday after May 25th?
Yes, May 26th.
May 26th. Okay. Any further on readiness or any discussion about it? Commissioner Suarez?
Just real quick, I know that there were many members of the community that were urging a deferral, so I think it's prudent to defer this for the reasons that you stated and for many other good reasons. I just want to say one thing, and I don't want to get into the whole issue of the tower and all that stuff, but I do want to get into an issue that is near and dear to my heart, which is technology and innovation. I do believe that it's intelligent for developers because I do feel that the future of the economy of our city is going to be tech-based. So I do believe in the notion that we should have tech space for tech companies. And I think it being in Overtown is a wonderful place for it to be. I don't think that we should do anything to prevent people who want to bring in investment from Silicon Valley and California to some of the more impoverished areas of our community because it sends the wrong message, I think, to our community. And I think the message that we want to send is that if you live in this city, no matter what neighborhood you live in, we're going to do everything we can as a government to give you the skills and the abilities to compete in the 21st century economy. And I think that's an innovation-based economy. So, there's a lot of extraneous factors here, the community benefit, which I agree with, and there's issues having to do with the tower itself, and we're going to defer it on those, for those reasons. But I do want to put, on the record that I think the Overtown community could benefit greatly from an innovation center, and I want to do everything in my power to make sure that residents of Overtown have the opportunity to receive those jobs that will be coming in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any other unreadiness? Commissioner Sarno, you recognize.
Yeah, I think one thing that you've seen, or if you've seen any emails, or is that people just don't know what this is because it was sort of 2 paragraphs on a CRA plan or 6.1.5 Miami 21 signage. And I'm going to ask you to ask the developer to at least do some community outreach. And I'm not just speaking about Overtown because this tower is going to be seen, 10 Museum, 900 Biscayne. It's going to be seen throughout. And I think the residents, the DNA, Downtown Neighborhood Association, the BNA, Biscayne Neighborhood Association, maybe even as far out as the Venetian Causeway. I think there should be some community meetings so there's some understanding as to what this tower will mean to them in terms of how it will interact with them, just with the lumens, with the candle power, with their vision of what the downtown is. As our neighborhoods merge together, and they will, I think there's got to be a little bit of outreach because I don't think this is just an Overtown issue, nor do I think it's just a Southeast Overtown Park West issue. I think it's a downtown issue. And I think there needs to be, as you would say, let's get the facts out, and once the facts come out, let everybody then have an opinion. But I don't know that they really understand the facts yet. So I'm really going to ask you, I'm not asking for a long delay, but I'm saying give the developer the imperative as the chair of the CRA and ask him to go out to the BNA, DNA, and maybe Venetian, I don't know, maybe that's enough. And do presentations, take questions, let them go through some public process so that they can come back, like I said, get the facts out, and then somebody can make a decision. Opinions are, they're a dime a dozen, but when you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases millions of dollars, on a condominium, I don't think they really knew exactly what they were getting into, and I just think they should be advised. Plus, as you know, Mr. Chair, in a public process, some good things can come out of that that haven't been thought of before. It's a nice presentation, it's an interesting building, but I think it requires some more public process.
And what I been recognized?
Go ahead, yes.
What I want to be clear about, Mr. Min, I know Mr. Min took the time to explain exactly what needs to be before this body. So we don't want anything before us that's not supposed to be before us, so I want you to consider that first. And additionally, I would ask that the mover and the second of the motion accept the friendly amendment so that they can, so that the applicant has an opportunity to speak to more people in the community, like Commissioner Sarnoff said. So I'd like to extend that to another month so they can have significant time to speak, and then also to draft those community benefits that are more beneficial.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, point of order.
No.
Can we have hear from the public?
I will tell you this. Right now, we're not going to take any substantive hearings or motions about this item. We're continuing to another time. So we're not going to take any comment from the public right now because we're not doing that. The next time this comes up, we'll take public comment.
So does that pertain to the signage and the billboards as well?
We're not taking any public, we're not doing anything substantive with the item but deferring it to the next, 2 meetings from now.
And we'll have a public hearing at that time?
So you understand what I'm saying to you, okay? So thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that's why when I made the motion for deferral, I asked if it was enough time. And I think it's prudent that we defer it until the June meeting. And that's June?
June
towards the end.
29th.
So I think 2 months will be sufficient time to do everything that needs to. So
I agree.
Thank you
I
very much.
amend my motion to June.
I agree with this.
Decorum, please. Decorum. Commissioner?
Personally, I think this is a project that affects the whole city of Miami, but we also need to understand whatever we do here in Overtown, whatever benefit we bring here to Overtown, it's going to benefit the whole city. And we have to look at this as a whole. I mean, we only, Overtown's been waiting for a lot of the improvement that have been taking place. I received this about, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week. I would like to get whatever draft you do, I'd like to see it before it comes in front of us. Because I had a lot of suggestions, a lot of amendments that I was going to make on this documents in here, because I went all through it. So I would like to have the draft if possible, because I think a lot of people don't really understand what the project is or the benefit of the project, and people need to understand how they're being affected or benefit personally. Because when people look at the house, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my neighborhood? I think we have to look at this as a whole.
All right, so thank you very much, Commissioner. The motion as stated by Commissioner Carollo and seconded by Suarez is on the floor. Any further on readiness?
With the imploring of the chair to make these public community meetings.
Right. I mean, it should be understood that this will not come back before us without having any public meetings. That is your due diligence that you must do. That is your due diligence that will help strengthen even the community benefits if necessary. But, ma'am, you're out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. You are out of order. Thank you very much. So, is there any further unreadiness from the board? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes.